Hey guys, my name is Evelyn, and I became incredibly rich by investing only $1. I won't deny that I was just lucky. However, we don't get so lucky every day, do we? Unfortunately, high money reached my head, and because of this, my family and I committed a lot of follies. It all started on a day when my parents told me the terrible news. The money they were saving for college had to be spent on major repairs of our house. I was not angry with them and had been sympathetic to the situation, but I was still very sad. No one in our family obtained a higher education, so I wanted to make this dream come true and become the first family member who would finally do it. My parents wanted the same, so they saved money while I tried to study hard, but the circumstances interfered with these plans. A year ago, I got very sick. A dangerous parasite was found in my body. The doctors found it in time, but still the consequences could not be avoided. I had stayed in the hospital for several months and then undergo treatment at home so that my body began to work normally. The study was out of question. Of course, I read textbooks and did my homework when I felt good, but this format of training affected my academic performance very negatively, and I hardly passed the end-of-year exams. The teacher kept saying that such grades leave me very little chance to get a scholarship. But I was not upset because my parents had the money for my education. However, as I've already said, they spent it on major repairs to the house. Our house was old, and we inherited it from our grandmother. The roof was leaking in a number of places, electricity worked badly, and there were also terrible drafts around the house. And so it happened that my dream of obtaining a higher education melted away. It was my senior year, but my grades were poor. I missed a huge period of school education, and therefore I could not study as well as my classmates. As for my parents, they did not have the money for a tutor. It was a desperate situation because I did not want to seek work in some dive bar or car wash right after school. Therefore, I decided to take the easy way out and invest in cryptocurrency. I have heard many cool stories from my parents and friends about the possibility of only investing $500 and then earning $10,000. I tried to persuade my parents to take a chance and buy cryptocurrency many times, but they refused, being skeptical about such earnings. I've been thinking a lot about where to invest my savings. The choice was huge, but my sixth sense told me that I had to find something special, and I found it. It was a cryptocurrency that had a cat icon as the brand. Well, that was unusual, original, and very positive choice. And I thought it would be better to invest money on a positive note. But there was disappointment waiting for me. I had $1,000 in my piggy bank, which I saved for a special occasion. But when I opened it, I found only $1 in there. It turned out that my parents took my money without permission. That made me really mad. They apologized to me and said that they urgently needed to buy spare parts for the car. Well, my plans to get rich quickly failed because it was hardly possible to get so much money by investing only $1. But in any case, it was better than nothing. I took a risk, and not in vain. I didn't really follow the rate of cryptocurrency, but when I did, 2 weeks later, I almost fainted from happiness. It raised by several thousands of percentage. And now I could get $5 million for it. Can you imagine that? I could not even dream of this. When I told my parents about it, they didn't even believe me. But when I showed them this unreal figure on the laptop screen, my mother cried with happiness, and my father could not utter a word. They hugged me and asked me how I could make such an amount of money. I told them about investing in cryptocurrency, and they wished they had done it earlier. I didn't wait for the cryptocurrency rate to change and decided to sell it immediately. After receiving the $5 million, I put away some of the money for college, and then I thought long and hard about where to spend the rest of the money. There were a lot of options. I could not stop at only one of them, so I decided to implement all my ideas at once. First of all, I bought a house for my parents to fulfill their dream. They were incredibly pleased with this acquisition. But the surprises for them did not end there, because my father's birthday, I bought him a new car. Believe me, the greatest happiness is when you see your parents are happy. Though, I didn't forget about my own needs either. Finally, I could afford any clothes, the best restaurants and clubs, and the newest gadgets. I spent money without care. My friends and classmates envied me and did not even hide their feelings from me. Well, of course, all this happened because I became rich by investing just $1. Well, they had never even thought about investing and turned out to be losers. At school, I attracted everyone's eyes. Everyone wanted to be friends with me. Also, even the most popular guys at our school began to notice me and asked me to go out with them. But it was clear to me that they did it only because of my money, so I refused everyone. Those losers preferred not to notice me when I was poor, but they all tried to attract my attention after I had money. Did I really have to make friends with such people? No way. That was pathetic. I definitely liked this kind of life, but there were some disadvantages as well. Some envious people started to cross the line. One day, someone stole my wallet with $10,000 in it at school. I planned to spend this money on dental care. Of course, I immediately went to the police. They found the culprit quickly, and it turned out to be my old friend Rachel. Big money made her lose her head. She listened to my stories about money and secretly dreamed of taking possession of it. But the only thing she was capable of stealing was my wallet, and she was not even ashamed. She said that it was a trifle for me, but for her, it was a significant amount of money. Of course, after what happened, trust and friendship were out of the question. The next time my parents were threatened. They were chatty people, so they told everyone at work how their daughter was able to earn $5 million. As soon as their colleagues found out about the money, they began to threaten, blackmail, and behave like Lotus. The situation reached a point where one of my colleagues dug up dirt on my parents and promised to send it to their boss. In that case, the career of my parents would come to an end. They were so scared that they took my money without permission and gave it to their blackmailer. But this time, it was $1 million. When I found out about this, I was angry. I yelled at them, saying that a blackmailer could make the whole thing up, and they were taken in by a scam like fools. The next day, this man left the city and then the country with our money. Couldn't go to the police since my parents gave him the $1 million voluntarily. Then I realized that it would be better to invest the remaining amount so that this money would not be lost. I decided to use a proven recipe and invest in different cryptocurrencies again. I spent the whole night looking for something unusual and interesting, and only in the morning I was able to finish my searches. I expected that my investments would increase just like that, but in a matter of days, the cryptocurrency rates decreased and their value went down. But I wasn't demoralized, hoping for other cryptocurrencies to bring me money. However, a real failure awaited me. None of them managed to net a profit. I lost all my money, and the amount was rather big. I went into hysterics from despair, and I just could not calm down. My parents heard my screams and crying and came to me immediately, but I couldn't even really explain to them what happened. When I came to my senses, more or less, they found out what had happened. Oh, you should have seen their disappointed faces. Of course, they've already gotten used to the luxurious life, and it was hard for them to return to stiff austerity again. And it was so terrible. I looked enviously at girls in brand-name clothes and almost cried when I stood near expensive boutiques. I wanted to buy a Chanel dress or Oscar de la Renta shoes so much, but I could only afford low-quality shoes from a regular store. I didn't even want to touch it, but that was not the worst. My parents got into bad trouble again. When we had a lot of money, they became shopping addicts and ordered a bunch of things from TV. Moreover, they didn't pay for the purchases all at once because the payment had to be made only upon the arrival of the goods. Unfortunately, we didn't have the money to pay for all this junk, and we couldn't return it to the shop because it was against the rules of the sale contract. All these purchases consisted of little things for the house and garden that we didn't need at all. My parents realized this when they saw everything they had ordered. Of course, I couldn't leave them in trouble and had to give away some of the money saved for college. Apparently, my dream of getting a higher education will never come true. After that, I harbored a huge grudge against them. They had set me up too many times. But people like them never learn. I am sure that in such a situation, many of you would have been very offended as well. I was hot under the collar, and they decided to add fuel to the fire. My parents began to accuse me of losing all my money because of investing in cryptocurrency. One thing led to another, and we had a big fight because of this money, after which we did not speak to each other for several days. But then my parents decided to make up with me and apologize. They said thanks to me, we had a good house, a car, and a cool life, albeit not for long. They realized that they were guilty towards me and decided to wash away the guilt. My father sold the car and returned all the money he received so that I could go to college and finally fulfill my dream. We realized that we shouldn't fight because of money, especially in light of the fact that it was received in such a simple way. What is cryptocurrency for you? Is it some kind of lottery or not? Write your opinion in the comments. Also, don't forget to leave a like on the video and share it with your friends. I was about 6 years old when my last baby tooth was removed. "Well, now we have removed another baby tooth of yours," the dentist told me. And in the meantime, my molars never began to grow. Mom was very worried about this, which she hurried up to tell Dr. Spencer. He assured, "Yes, it happens. They are being late, but they will grow soon." The dentist handed me a lollipop, and I smiled at my mother with my toothless smile. She only sighed in response, and by taking my hand, led me home. Hi guys, I'm Jessica, and I'm going to tell you a story about why my teeth don't grow. Already then, the absence of molars worried me. There were advantages. I could eat as many sweets as I wanted to without having to worry about cavities. I also didn't have to brush my teeth every day. My mom looked into my mouth, checking if at least one new tooth had finally appeared. But it still wasn't there. It was time to go to the first grade. I couldn't wait. It seemed to me that school was the best place on earth. I was hoping to meet new friends. On the first day, everyone was getting to know each other and talking about themselves. I went to my classmates' greetings. "Hey, guys." "Hey," one of the boys replied. "What's your name?" "Jessica." The guys suddenly began to laugh and imitate me. "Jessica." "I am Steve." "Don't tease her, Steve, or she will bite." The laughter erupted by the voice of another boy, Jeremy. "Stop mocking her." Jeremy wanted to protect me, but I can handle myself in anger. I clenched my gums and clenched my fist. I was small and still could not control my emotions, so I just attacked my offenders with my fist. A fight had ensued, which was quickly stopped by the teacher who had come in time. He grabbed me by the collar and took me to the director. The director notified my mother and talked to her for a long time while I was waiting in the corridor in my primary school. You could still live in peace. Many children were missing half their teeth, but when I was in high school, I had to switch to homeschooling in order to not endure bullying. Every second, I was studying with teachers who would come to my house. Every day. In the evenings, I got stuck in front of the mirror checking if at least one tooth had grown. But my mouth was still empty. I had spent the whole summer at home while my peers were enjoying their life. Finally, it was time to move to the 10th grade, and I was determined to go to school and start living the life of a normal teenager. Standing at the blackboard, getting hit with the ball in my face, and the gym, going on dates, or whatever else teenagers are doing out there. In the evenings, we would sit at the table with the whole family and dine. I was observing my grandma eat a steak with vegetables. She had dentures, and I could only drink smoothies. One day, my patience ran out. I told my mother, "I want dentures, like grandma's." "We've already discussed this. You can't. You know they can interfere with the growth of your molars." "Mom, we both know they will never grow." "I have accepted this, and you have to as well." I didn't listen to what my mother would answer and left the table, but I didn't give up. When Grandma had fallen asleep, I literally tiptoed into her room. The dentures were lying in a glass. "Just reach out and they're yours." I dipped my hand into the glass and took out her artificial teeth. It felt like I had pulled Excalibur out of a stone, and now I had unlimited powers in my hands. I quietly left my grandmother's room in the morning. In front of the mirror, I inserted the dentures into my mouth and voluntarily admired my new smile. I had to adjust the jaw sometimes, but it was okay. I had a mouthful of teeth. For the record, I had brushed these teeth 1,000 times. For the record, I had brushed these teeth 1,000 times before I tried them on. I went downstairs. Mom had not yet woken up Grandma, and I did a perfect crime. Having grabbed my backpack, I went to school. I entered the classroom when the lesson had already started. Everyone was surprised, and the teacher didn't even recognize me. "You must be new?" he asked, confused. "I'm Jessica Walter." My constant abuser, Steve, did not miss this opportunity to joke. "Don't make it up. Everyone knows Jessica Walter has teeth like a frog." The whole class laughed in unison. I wanted to attack him, but I pulled myself together. I didn't want to end up going to the director on such a beautiful day, but I couldn't remain silent either, really. "And I heard that you have the brain of a chicken, Steve. Shut up." It turned out that at homeschooling, I was far ahead of my classmates in knowledge, and already, after one lesson, I was named the smartest in the class. For the first time, I was praised and not humiliated. It seemed that a lot of people liked me. Steve even came up to me and apologized for his silly jokes. So I came home highly optimistic. However, at home, my mood had declined significantly because they were waiting for me. My very angry, toothless granny and my furious mom. "How could you have taken her teeth? Grandma has not been able to eat for the whole day." "It was just a couple of hours. Moreover, she could have used a blender." Mom and I stared at each other angrily, immediately returning the grandma her jaw. I pulled the denture out of my mouth and handed it to my grandmother. "Here you are. Take it." I said I will not return to school without my case. Oddly enough, this time, she did not protest. "Tomorrow, we are going to the dentist." This was something I had not expected to hear. I hugged my mom very tightly. This was great news. The next morning, we went to the dentist. Judging by the expression on his face, he was not very happy with our decision because he still believed that my molars would definitely show up, but he did not interfere with us. At the end of the week, my new teeth were ready, and I was able to go to school again. The kids surrounded me and asked me where I had been. "Probably because she had been preparing for the competition," Steve suggested. My classmate Mary explained everything to me. "Talent show will take place this Friday. For example, I will be dancing." If Steve thought I would get scared, he was wrong. I had been learning how to sing since childhood. So now I sounded like Rihanna. Okay, maybe not that good. I will sing. "Wow, I'm sure you sing beautifully." Jeremy appeared out of nowhere and gave me a mysterious wink. However, then he blushed and was quick to leave. The bell rang for the lesson, and we hurried up to class. But before that, Mary asked me, "If you were away for a week because you had your teeth bleached, that's good. They've been terribly yellow. Will you give me your dentist's number? He seems to be professional." I nodded, embarrassed for the remaining few days. I had been rehearsing the song for the competition. I really like showing off in front of the camera and looking at my snow-white smile. On that day, I was standing backstage in a beautiful dress and waiting for my turn. Finally, the host called my name. I went to the stage and slowly walked over to the microphone. Almost all the students from school were sitting in the hall, and also the parents of the participants. I was a little worried, but when I saw my mom in the hall, I calmed down and started singing. I was singing very beautifully, and the audience liked it because as soon as I finished, the audience stood up and applauded. Everyone was shouting, "Encore! Encore!" And then I made an unforgivable mistake. I sang for them one more time, and at the end of the chorus, I took one note as long and as high as I could, and exactly at this moment, the denture decided to leave my mouth and fall, tapping right on the floor. I did not even immediately notice, and I devotedly continued to sing. I realized that something was wrong when the audience's applause had changed to laughter. People in the hall were pointing their fingers at something on the floor at my feet and were laughing to tears. I looked down and my teeth were lying on the floor. Unfortunately, I could not hold back my emotions and burst into tears right on stage. I grabbed my dentures and hurried up to hide behind the curtains. My mother was already waiting for me in the car outside. When we were driving away, some of my classmates were standing at the school door laughing and shouting something hurtful at me. At home, I locked myself in my room and did not want to talk to anyone. Why did something so unfair happen to me? Mom did not bother me until the morning, but in the morning, despite all my protests, she put me in the car and drove me somewhere. Half an hour later, we came into the dentist's office who was treating a patient at that moment and was somewhat discouraged by us turning up. "Good afternoon?" "Not so good after all," my mom barked in response. The prosthesis for which we had paid a lot of money turned out to be bad. For starters, let's understand the situation. For starters, let's understand the situation, and then you accuse me of something, okay? The doctor left his patient in the chair, changed his gloves, and began to examine my mouth. After a minute, he smiled. "I know what the matter is." He gave me a mirror and asked me to open my mouth. I was absolutely delighted that my teeth had started cutting through my gums. "New teeth are displacing the prosthesis. Very soon they will grow fully, and you will not need a denture anymore." Then the doctor asked us to go out and to not interfere with his work. I was not offended even a bit. On the contrary, I was very happy with my new teeth. I was not planning to come to that goddamn school again until my mouth would be full of white, beautiful teeth. But my mother had a different opinion. In the morning, she brought me to the school porch and literally pushed me out of the car while saying, "You must be able to deal with difficulties." It was easy for her to say it, as it was not her who had been disgraced in front of the whole school. But in some ways, my mother was right. I pulled myself together and entered the classroom. As expected, everyone began to laugh, remembering my enchanting performance and how my teeth had gracefully swept down to the floor. "You have no teeth at all, do you?" Steve chuckled. "I have as many teeth as there are convolutions in your brain, Steve." I smiled to show him. My classmates had appreciated my joke and for some time switched their attention to the offended Steve. In the dining room, during lunch, Jeremy suddenly sat down next to me. "Don't mind them," he smiled. I tried to smile back. "These hypocrites were ready to carry you in their arms when you were singing, but when you got into an unpleasant situation, they started hating you. But you were brave, and you even set an example for me, that there is nothing to be afraid of. I used to be afraid to approach you, but now I finally have been able to." Jeremy put his hand on mine. I was totally cool with that. We smiled at each other without noticing anyone around us. What is the most embarrassing moment that has ever happened to you? Post your responses in the comments section and click like if you enjoyed my story.
Foundation agent Brian Miller sat at his desk holding his head in his hands. It had been a particularly rough day for him. One of the SCPs he had been interviewing had overpowered him and broken out of its containment units. It was the first time he had ever been involved in a security breach. The SCP was a particularly violent subject and had managed to create havoc at the Foundation. Unfortunately, 4 personnel had lost their lives during the breach. It had taken around 20 heavily armed Foundation personnel to capture and contain the SCP. Agent Miller had been summoned by the head of the Foundation himself to give an account of the incident. "This must never happen again, Miller, or we will have to review your future with the Foundation." "Yes, of course, it won't happen again. Now, I want a full report on my desk before you leave tonight." Agent Miller went back to his office. He didn't mind admitting the incident today had shaken him badly. At one point, he had thought the SCP was going to kill him. He switched on his computer and began to type up the report. As he recalled the events of the day, his heart began pounding and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. It took him almost 3 hours to complete the incident report, and when it was done, he was exhausted. The whole day had completely drained him. I just need to get out of here and have a good night's sleep. I'm sure I'll feel a lot better in the morning. Agent Miller switched off the computer and opened his desk drawer. It was a piece of paper, one of the results of the experiment between 2 SCPs that had been conducted that morning. The results had been disappointing. All that came out of it was a sketch of a young woman about 15 centimeters high. She had long hair worn in a ponytail and she was wearing a summer dress. Underneath was written the word Cassandra. He put the piece of paper down on his desk. He decided he would deal with it in the morning. All he wanted to do now was go home to his family. He glanced at the photo of his wife and children, which was sitting on his desk. They were the only thing that kept him sane. Suddenly, his eyes flickered back to the drawing. He felt sure the woman had moved. The stress of today must have really affected me. Now I'm starting to imagine things. Agent Miller picked up his briefcase and walked towards the door. But just before he left the room, he took one final glance at the sketch. The woman waved at him. Welcome back to SCP Exposed. Today, we bring you Safety Class Subject SCP-085. SCP-085 is the result of an experiment conducted between SCP-067, the Foundation Pen, and SCP-914, a clockwork design using SCP-067 Test Subject 1101F. Through a single female figure about 15 centimeters in height and 3.8 centimeters wide, she is wearing a summer dress and her long hair is pulled back into a ponytail. The name Cassandra is written underneath. A Foundation doctor proposed using SCP-914 on various settings on images created by SCP-067, using the fine setting. The Cassandra sketch was transmuted into a present form, a sentient black and white animated young woman drawn in clean strokes. Further attempts to duplicate this result have been unsuccessful. SCP-085 is to be contained in a single chalk white bond drawing pad in a secure containment facility. Supervised contact with it is unrestricted to all personnel with Level 2 access. All personnel coming into contact with it are subject to searches and random psychoanalysis upon entering or leaving the containment area. Absolutely no paper or canvas media are allowed to exit SCP-085's containment room. Any paper trash must be disposed of by an incineration after careful inspection. Paper and art supplies are to be brought in only by authorized personnel. In case of fire, flames are smothered using a rapid atmospheric replacement and CO2 dumping system. Personnel are advised to quickly secure an oxygen mask and tank from the wall at the first sign of smoke or fire to prevent asphyxiation, as this process cannot be halted until all fires are suppressed. SCP-085 prefers to be called Cassie. She is completely sentient, and as of March 5, 2018, is aware of her 2D form and her limitations in a 3-dimensional world. Although her voice is inaudible, she has learned to communicate with SCP Foundation personnel through sign language and writing. She may be communicated with by writing text on the paper she exists on. Personnel reports that she is amicable and motivated, albeit lonely. She can interact with any drawn object on the same page as if it were real. For example, she's able to wear drawn clothing, drive sketched cars, and drink painted beverages. Except for animals and people, any drawn object becomes animated when in contact with SCP-085, but immediately ceases and holds position once out of contact. Artwork initially depicted as in motion, such as ocean, waves, and swaying trees, animate to an equilibrium state and stay at rest until acted upon by SCP-085. SCP-085 has also demonstrated the ability to transfer from one sheet or image to another as long as the two images are flush. In the event she enters a picture that does not support drawn objects, such as a repeating pattern, the picture is converted to a background image. SCP-085 perceives the picture as an endless plane of the image drawn upon it at the present time. SCP-085 can only exist upon paper or canvas surfaces. She cannot transfer onto photos, cardboard, glass, or parchment. When entering other pieces of art, she takes on the artistic style of her new environment, whether it be a comic book, an oil painting, watercolor, or charcoal sketching. In comic form, her voice is visible as thoughts and voice bubbles around her head in typical comic fashion, and as she moves between panels, the perspective and her relative size are altered appropriately. Research introduced several prints authored by M.C. Escher to SCP-085. The following is a transcript of this Cassandra. This is known as ascending and descending. What do you think? Asked the researcher. At this point, SCP-085 walks a few times around the staircase. It's pretty, I guess. It would make a neat exercise track, she replied. You see nothing inconsistent with the staircase? No, not as far as I can tell. It just loops around down all the time. Why don't more staircases do that? It's pretty neat. After this session, SCP-085 requested several impossible objects in her own environments. These requests are pending over 5 overview. Document 0852 is a report of an incident involving SCP-085. Prior to the incident, SCP-085 was unaware of its status as a 2-dimensional object in a 3-dimensional world. Prior security protocols required that it be kept unaware of its true nature in order to prevent psychological distress. Discrepancies with the perceived real world were presented as dreams or nightmares. And an effort was made to present it with a scenario in which it was the last surviving human in a post-apocalyptic world searching for survivors. The deception was quickly broken following an incident where an SCP Foundation researcher accidentally brought a hard copy of SCP-085's Special Containment Procedures report into the containment facility and allowed it to contact the artifact's current location. SCP transferred onto the documents before the researcher could remove it and was immediately made aware of its true nature. Because of the containment breach, several researchers advocated immediate destruction of the artifact. The decision was appealed to the 05 Council, which is an official majority decision advocated for SCP-085's continued existence. Since the revelation of her true nature, observers have noted that SCP-085 has begun to show signs of clinical depression. Psychotherapy has been proposed, but the nature of the artifact's states of existence may make it difficult. Some success has been had by providing SCP-085 tangible means to distract herself from her condition. In addition to the aforementioned optical illusions, she expressed particular interest in a set of technical drawings for a 1964 Ford Mustang convertible. Transferring the parts one by one to a more naturalistic artwork, then assembling the vehicle by hand over the period of a year. Gasoline was provided through a Norman Rockwell print of a gas station attendant. Request for further diversions of this nature are pending 05 level review and approval. Some Foundation personnel have theorized that perhaps SCP-085 is the ghost of a woman trying to communicate with the living world, or part of a parallel world where moving sketch drawings is the norm. However, none of these theories have been proven. It is therefore evidence that SCP-085 is just the freak result of the experiments between 067 and 914. What do you think of this SCP case? Please leave your thoughts down in the comment section below.